Welcome back to Coding, your weekly dose of cybersecurity insights. This week, we're diving into a stack of articles from Tech Radar, and let me tell you, it's a wild ride through the ever-evolving landscape of digital threats.
It's fascinating how these headlines highlight the constant tension between our desire for convenience and the need for robust security. Sometimes it feels like we're walking a tightrope.
Absolutely, and this week's news really drives that point home. First up, we've got Allstate, the insurance giant, facing a lawsuit for allegedly mishandling not one, but two data breaches.
That's right. The New York Attorney General is going after Allstate's National General Unit for failing to report these breaches, which affected a staggering number of customers. We're talking about 12,000 individuals in one incident back in 2020 and a whopping 187,000 in another in 2021.
Thousands of people left in the dark about their compromised data. That's a serious breach of trust. Can you unpack what exactly went wrong here?
The lawsuit points to lax security practices that led to the exposure of driver's license numbers. This is a direct violation of New York's Stop Hacks law, which requires companies to implement reasonable safeguards to protect sensitive personal information.
So Allstate is in trouble for both the breaches themselves and for failing to properly notify those affected, as well as the authorities.
Precisely. Now, Allstate claims they addressed the incidents appropriately and are denying any wrongdoing. They say they secured their systems, contacted potentially affected customers, and even offered free credit monitoring services.
It sounds like they're trying to put out the fire with a Band-Aid solution. But this case raises a bigger question for you, our listener. How much trust do you place in companies to protect your data? It's a good reminder that we can't just passively hand over our information and hope for the best.
Absolutely. It highlights the importance of being proactive about our own cybersecurity. We can't solely rely on companies to have our backs. We need to take steps to safeguard our data ourselves.
Okay, so let's shift gears to another alarming trend that always seems to be lurking in the shadows. Botnets. This time, the articles highlight how even seemingly harmless devices can be turned against us.
It's true. Cybercriminals are constantly looking for ways to hijack everyday devices and turn them into weapons for their attacks. We have two cases in point here, both involving vulnerabilities in devices that people often use in their homes.
Right. The first one involves an old Edimax IP camera. Those cameras people often use for home security. But what makes this case particularly unsettling is that it involves a vulnerability that dates back to 2016.
And to make matters worse, there's no patch available. Edimax has essentially abandoned the model, leaving users with no option but to replace their devices entirely if they want to stay protected.
So anyone still using an older Edimax IC-7100 camera is basically a sitting duck for hackers. It's a harsh reminder that even devices designed to enhance security can become liabilities if they're not properly maintained.
The second case involves a TP-Link Archer router flaw, which is interesting because it's a resurgence of an old vulnerability that was supposedly patched.
Wait, so even if you think you're safe because you've diligently updated your device, you might not be. That's a bit unsettling.
It is. This TP-Link flaw was exploited back in 2023 and 2024, and now it's making a comeback, being used by a suspected Italian group called Ballista to create a botnet.
It highlights the cat-and-mouse game of cybersecurity. Patch one vulnerability and another one pops up. It can feel like an endless cycle.
It can be exhausting, but that's why staying informed and vigilant is so crucial. Regularly check for updates, even for devices you think are already secure. Complacency is the enemy in this digital world.
Speaking of complacency, let's talk about a topic that's been generating a lot of buzz lately. AI.
Yeah.
Specifically DeepSeek AI, a new technology that's become incredibly popular. But as we know, popularity often attracts unwanted attention.
You hit the nail on the head. Cybercriminals are exploiting the hype surrounding DeepSeek to trick people into downloading malware disguised as the real deal.
It's a classic case of taking advantage of a trend. The campaign, according to the articles, is quite sophisticated, using fake websites, a hacked X account, formerly known as Twitter, and even geofencing to target specific victims.
They've even created fake reviews and inflated download numbers to create an illusion of legitimacy, making their malicious software appear trustworthy.
It's almost as if they're constructing a parallel internet where everything looks authentic, but is actually designed to steal your data. It's a sobering reminder that we need to be critical thinkers online and always question what we see.
Absolutely. We can't just blindly trust what we find online, especially when it comes to something as hyped as DeepSeek. Verification is key.
So before you download anything, take a moment to verify the source, read reviews from reputable sites, and be wary of anything that seems too good to be true. And this is where a good security software suite can really be your best friend, right?
Absolutely. Having reliable security software is like having a digital bodyguard, constantly scanning for and blocking threats before they can cause any harm. It's a fundamental layer of protection that everyone should have in place.
Now let's take a quick look at some other notable cybersecurity news from this week. First up, we have a security flaw discovered in a Chinese-made ESP32 Bluetooth chip found in millions of IoT devices worldwide.
This vulnerability could potentially allow malicious actors to execute commands remotely and steal data from those devices. It's a concerning development, especially given how pervasive these chips are in our connected world.
Not another IoT vulnerability. It seems like every other day a new smart device is being compromised. It's a constant reminder that security needs to be baked into the design of these devices from the ground up.
I agree. As our homes and lives become increasingly interconnected, the security of these devices can't be an afterthought. It's paramount.
Now, shifting to a story that's frankly disturbing, YouTubers being blackmailed with copyright claims. Can you tell us more about this campaign?
This one is particularly insidious. Attackers are targeting YouTubers who create tutorials on tools used to bypass government censorship. They're filing fake copyright claims and then offering to drop those claims if the YouTubers agree to promote a specific GitHub link in their videos.
So they're preying on these creators' fear of copyright strikes and their willingness to help their audience. But what's lurking behind this seemingly helpful GitHub link?
A nasty surprise. The GitHub repository is actually distributing Trojanized software that installs a crypto miner called Silent Crypto Miner on the victim's computer.
So these YouTubers, many of whom are likely trying to help people access information freely, are being manipulated into spreading malware. That's a new low, even for cybercriminals.
It's a reminder that they will exploit any avenue they can to spread their malicious software. No tactic is off limits.
Before we move on to the next section of our deep dive, let's talk about a topic that always seems to be sparking debate: encryption.
Encryption, the digital shield that protects our privacy and security. Yet it's constantly under scrutiny from governments around the world, creating this ongoing tug-of-war between security needs and individual rights.
And we have some interesting news out of France this week. They've rejected a controversial provision that would have required backdoors in encrypted messaging apps for law enforcement.
This decision is a significant victory for privacy advocates who argue that weakening encryption for anyone, even for law enforcement purposes, weakens it for everyone. It's like creating a vulnerability that can be exploited by anyone, not just the intended parties.
So essentially creating a master key that can unlock any door, which is a pretty scary thought. But what was the rationale behind France wanting these backdoors in the first place?
Their government, like many others, argues that they need access to encrypted communications to investigate crimes, especially drug trafficking, which is what this particular bill was aimed at combating.
But the tech industry and privacy advocates push back hard, warning about the potential for abuse and the chilling effect this could have on freedom of speech. If people know their conversations can be accessed, they might be less inclined to communicate freely, especially about sensitive topics.
Exactly. It could have a significant impact on whistleblowing, journalism, and even political activism.
So France ultimately sided with privacy, at least for now.
Yes, but the debate is far from over. Similar legislation is being considered in other countries, including Sweden. And let's not forget the UK, where Apple was recently forced to remove end-to-end encryption for iCloud backups due to government pressure.
It seems like this tug-of-war between governments wanting access to data and individuals wanting to protect their privacy is likely to continue for the foreseeable future.
It is a complex issue with no easy answers, but it's a conversation we need to be a part of. We all need to be informed about the implications of encryption, both the benefits and the risks, so we can advocate for the kind of digital world we want to live in.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive, but we're just getting started. When we come back, we'll continue dissecting these stories and exploring what they mean for you, our listeners. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Calm Coding.
We're picking up our deep dive right where we left off, exploring the latest cybersecurity news and what it all means for you. This time, let's zoom in on a few of these stories and really dissect the potential impact.
Sounds good to me. Let's start with the Allstate lawsuit. I'm particularly curious about the implications, both for the company itself and for the consumers whose data was exposed.
Yeah, beyond the obvious PR nightmare for Allstate. What kind of legal and financial repercussions are we talking about here?
Well, the New York Attorney General isn't pulling any punches. They're seeking $5,000 for each violation of the Stop Hacks law. Given the number of individuals affected in those two data breaches, the fines could be astronomical.
Ouch, that's going to leave a mark on their bottom line. But what about the impact on the individuals whose driver's license numbers were exposed? What are the potential consequences beyond the breach of trust?
It's not just about trust, it's about real-world harm. Those exposed driver's license numbers are a goldmine for identity thieves. They can use that information to open credit card accounts, take out loans, even commit other crimes in your name.
That's scary stuff. It really underscores how vulnerable our personal information is, even when we think it's being protected by large corporations. This case should be a wake-up call for anyone who assumes their data is safe, just because it's with a well-known company.
It also highlights the need for strong data privacy regulations and for companies to be held accountable when they fail to protect our data. We need to demand better, both from lawmakers and from the companies we entrust with our information.
Okay, let's shift gears to the botnet cases. We talked about those vulnerabilities in Edimax cameras and TP-Link routers, but what practical steps can our listeners take to protect themselves from these kinds of threats? It can feel overwhelming knowing that even everyday devices can be turned against us.
It's all about having a layered approach to security, and it starts with awareness. Know what devices you have connected to your network and regularly check for firmware updates. Don't assume that just because a device is old or seems unimportant that it can't be compromised.
So keep everything updated, even that dusty old router in the back of the closet that we all try to forget about.
Exactly. And if a device is no longer supported by the manufacturer, like that Edimax camera we talked about, it's time to replace it with a newer, more secure model.
Nope.
Holding onto outdated devices is like leaving a window wide open for hackers.
That's a good analogy.
Yep.
But for those devices that are still supported, how do we know if there's a new update available? Is it a manual process that we have to remember to do? Or is there an easier way?
Many modern routers and IoT devices have automatic update features. Make sure those are enabled so you don't have to think about it. Otherwise, check the manufacturer's website or app for the latest firmware version.
Those automatic updates are a lifesaver, especially for those of us who aren't as tech savvy. But what about security software? Can that help protect against botnets?
Absolutely. A good security suite can detect and block malicious traffic associated with botnets. It can also alert you if a device on your network is exhibiting suspicious behavior, giving you a heads up that something might be amiss.
So it's like having a security guard for your network, constantly patrolling for anything suspicious. That extra layer of protection can make all the difference.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, a strong, unique password on your router is absolutely essential. Don't leave it set to the default password. That's like leaving your front door unlocked and inviting trouble in.
Speaking of doors being left open, let's revisit that DeepSeek AI story. It's a prime example of how attackers are capitalizing on the excitement and hype surrounding new technologies. They know that people are eager to try the latest and greatest, and they exploit that eagerness.
Yes, and it's not just limited to AI. Cybercriminals are always looking for ways to exploit trends and prey on people's curiosity. Whether it's a new social media platform, a hot new gadget, or a groundbreaking technology, you can bet that attackers are already figuring out how to exploit it for their gain.
So how do we avoid falling into these traps? It seems like everything online is trying to get us to click on something, download something, or give up our information.
The key is to be skeptical. Don't take anything at face value. Verify sources, read reviews from reputable sites, and be wary of anything that seems too good to be true. If a deal sounds too amazing, it probably is.
That's good advice for life in general, not just online. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. But it's easy to get swept up in the hype, especially when everyone's talking about something.
And when it comes to downloading software, always stick to official sources. Don't rely on third-party websites or links shared on social media. You never know what might be lurking behind that innocent-looking download button.
It's like getting your food from a reputable grocery store versus a shady back alley vendor.
Yeah.
You want to know what you're getting and that it's safe to consume.
Exactly. And just like you wouldn't eat food that looks suspicious, don't install software that raises red flags. Pay attention to your security software's warnings. They're there for a reason.
This DeepSeek story is a reminder that even tech-savvy people can fall victim to these scams. No one is immune.
Absolutely. Cybercriminals are constantly evolving their tactics, so we need to stay informed and adapt our defenses accordingly. It's a never-ending learning process.
Well said. Now, before we move on to the encryption debate, let's touch on those other two cybersecurity stories we mentioned earlier, the ESP32 Bluetooth chip vulnerability and the YouTubers being blackmailed.
You mean the one where a tiny chip could potentially expose millions of devices, and the other where content creators are being manipulated into spreading malware? Yeah, those are worth revisiting.
Exactly. Let's start with the Bluetooth chip. What are the implications of this vulnerability being so widespread? It's a little unnerving to think that something so small could have such a huge impact.
It's a valid concern because this chip is found in a mind-boggling number of devices, from smart home gadgets to wearable tech. If exploited, it could give attackers access to sensitive data and control over those devices.
So potentially, someone could hack into your smart speaker, your fitness tracker, even your smart refrigerator. That's a bit unsettling.
In theory, yes. It underscores the need for manufacturers of all connected devices to prioritize security from the get-go, not just the obvious ones like computers and smartphones. Everything that connects to the internet is a potential target.
And what can consumers do to protect themselves? Is there anything we can do besides hoping that manufacturers patch these vulnerabilities?
Staying informed is key. Research the devices you're considering buying, look for security certifications, and check if the manufacturer has a good track record of releasing timely security updates.
So do your homework before bringing a new connected device into your home. Don't just buy the first shiny thing you see without considering the potential security risks.
Exactly. And be mindful of the data you're sharing with these devices. Do you really need your refrigerator connected to the internet? Sometimes less connectivity means less risk. It's all about finding that balance between convenience and security.
Okay, let's shift to the YouTuber blackmail campaign. This one hits close to home because it targets content creators, people who are trying to share information and help others. It feels particularly cruel to exploit that good intention.
It's a really nasty tactic because it preys on people's fear of copyright strikes and their desire to be helpful. YouTubers are often under pressure to resolve these claims quickly, which makes them more vulnerable to this type of scam.
So if a YouTuber receives a copyright claim, what should they do? How can they tell if it's legitimate or a scam? It can be hard to know what to trust in those situations.
Don't panic. First, verify the claim. Check if the claimant is actually the copyright holder. Look for inconsistencies in the claim or communication. If anything seems fishy, don't hesitate to reach out to YouTube for support.
And of course, never click on links or download files from untrusted sources, even if they're being shared by someone you follow.
Right. And if you're ever unsure, err on the side of caution. It's better to be safe than sorry when it comes to your online security.
Well said. I think we've thoroughly explored these specific cybersecurity incidents. Let's take a quick breather, and then we'll dive into the encryption debate and its implications for the future of digital privacy. It's a complex issue that's going to have a major impact on all of us. Welcome back to Calm Coding.
We're in the final stretch of our deep dive into this week's cybersecurity news.
And we're wrapping things up with that ongoing debate over encryption.
It's a debate that's heating up as governments worldwide grapple with balancing security needs with individual privacy rights.
We saw France push back against those proposed encryption backdoors, but it doesn't feel like the issue is going away anytime soon.
Not at all. It's a fundamental tension between security and privacy that isn't going to be resolved easily.
So let's break down the arguments from both sides. Starting with governments. Why are they so keen on having access to encrypted communications? What's driving that push?
Well, their primary argument is that encryption hinders law enforcement investigations. They say it allows criminals to operate with impunity, using encrypted messaging apps and services to plan and carry out illegal activities without fear of being detected.
Yeah, I can see their point. They're tasked with keeping people safe, so naturally they want to use every tool at their disposal to catch criminals.
Exactly. And they also argue that encryption can be used to conceal terrorist activities, making it harder to prevent attacks and protect national security. That's a powerful argument, especially in today's world.
Those are serious concerns, no doubt. But what about the other side of the argument? Why are tech companies and privacy advocates so vehemently opposed to encryption backdoors? What are their main concerns?
Their biggest fear is that weakening encryption for anyone, even for law enforcement, weakens it for everyone. It's like creating a vulnerability that can be exploited by anyone, not just the intended parties.
So it's like creating a master key that can unlock any door, which sounds pretty risky. If that key falls into the wrong hands, the consequences could be catastrophic.
That's exactly the analogy they often use. They often know that once a backdoor exists, it's only a matter of time before someone with malicious intent figures out how to exploit it. And then everyone's data is at risk, not just the people being targeted by law enforcement.
It's a valid point. And privacy advocates also worry about the potential chilling effect on freedom of speech and expression. If people know their conversations could be accessed by the government, they might be less likely to communicate freely, especially about sensitive topics.
Absolutely. It could have a significant impact on whistleblowers, journalists, activists, anyone who relies on secure communication to share information without fear of reprisal.
So essentially, it could stifle dissent and make it harder for people to hold power to account. That's a significant concern.
It is. And we've already seen cases where governments have used surveillance powers to target and silence critics. Encryption helps level the playing field, allowing individuals to speak freely without fear of being monitored.
France ultimately sided with privacy this particular case, but it sounds like this debate is far from over.
It's definitely not going away anytime soon. Similar legislation is being considered in other countries, and the pressure on tech companies to compromise on encryption is likely to continue.
It's a complex issue with strong arguments on both sides. How do you see this debate playing out in the future? Any predictions?
It's hard to say for sure. Technology is constantly evolving, as are the tactics of cybercriminals, and the methods used by law enforcement to combat them. The legal and ethical frameworks surrounding encryption are still being developed, so it's a constantly shifting landscape.
It feels like we're all navigating uncharted territory here. But one thing's for sure. This debate is one that we all need to be engaged in, because the outcome will have a profound impact on our digital lives.
Absolutely. We need to understand the implications of encryption, both the benefits and the risks, so we can make informed decisions about the kind of digital world we want to live in and the kind of future we want to create for ourselves and for generations to come.
Well said. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into this week's cybersecurity news. I hope you found it informative and insightful.
We encourage you to continue exploring these topics and to stay vigilant in protecting your own digital security. It's a shared responsibility.
Remember, knowledge is your best defense. Stay informed, stay curious, and stay safe out there.
Until next time on Calm Coding.